We all know about IQ. That's your smarts, how clever you are. And of course, it's great to have a few brains. But there's nothing more sad in this world than miserable geniuses. Brilliant people trapped in dead-end jobs. Little Einsteins with wretched relationships. People with real talent and ability, but they end up as no-hopers. What's going on here?
Well, IQ is important, but what's far more important is EQ, your emotional intelligence. EQ will determine your success and happiness in life far more than IQ. And that's good news really, because there's not much you can do to raise your IQ.
Though there are some television programs that'll certainly lower your intelligence.
You can't raise your IQ, but you can raise your EQ. You can train your kids to have good EQ as well.
Empathy is one of the keys of good EQ. Empathy is feeling what someone else is feeling. When someone is sad, you feel some of their sorrow. When someone's frightened, you understand their fear. A person with empathy relates very easily with others. They understand and they connect. If a person has absolutely no empathy, then technically they're a psychopath.
Training in empathy starts with understanding your own feelings. That's why the session on honouring our children's emotions was so valuable. During the school-age years, give your children the ability to label their emotions correctly and to handle their emotions appropriately. Learning these skills is a lifelong task. But by starting to teach an emotional vocabulary during childhood, you'll have a communication toehold when the emotional flak really starts bursting around during the teenage years. And it can be so much easier if your child can already speak feelings talk. Gratitude and sympathy are things that both require empathy, but also train a child in them, so that thank you doesn't just become a meaningless phrase. Try using different phrases that express gratitude. I appreciate that. That was kind. It was lovely of you to do that.
A researcher did a fascinating experiment. He gave children a chocolate. He put it in front of them and said they could eat it now if they wanted to, but he said if they could wait until he returned without eating the first chocolate, then they could have 2 chocolates. The researcher then left the room for some minutes. Some kids couldn't wait. They just hoed straight in. But others waited patiently, drooling probably, but they didn't touch the chocolate. The researcher then returned and rewarded the ones who had waited with an extra chocolate. The researcher then followed those kids for years. Now, normally I'd be worried about a man who gives kids chocolates and then follows them, but he made a fascinating discovery. The kids who waited and got the extra chocolate went on to become the most successful in their studies and sports. They became class leaders, and they went on to have better jobs. Now, either that second chocolate must have had some powerful drug in it, or else there is something powerful in learning at a young age the self-control to be able to put off having something nice now so that you can have something better later.
Those little children in the experiment had already learned about deferring gratification, that it is often better to postpone a pleasure so that you can have a greater pleasure later. It's one of the basics of EQ. You defer spending so you can save for something really special. You defer eating lollies now so you can really enjoy your meal later. Or you defer relaxing now so you can train to win the race. Nearly every worthwhile thing in life comes at the price of deferring gratification. How can you teach this to your children? Well, this can actually be quite tough because the logic won't appeal to them at a young age. The trick is to make the delays before gratification short at the start and the rewards appealing. If you do your music practice, then in 12 years you'll have your LTCL. I don't think that'll keep a 6-year-old kid interested. But how about if you keep practicing until the timer on the stove goes off, then I'll push you on the swing. Remember a child's concept of time. Asking them to wait 10 minutes for a lolly is like someone asking you to wait 3 hours for a cup of coffee.
Altruism isn't a word that pops up in everyday conversation, but it's a vital ingredient in EQ. It's doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. People who act against their values automatically have poor EQ. They just don't feel good. and they're always stumbling in their relationships.
EQ is something you can cultivate over your whole lifetime. Even as adults, we're trying to improve in this area. But your children will get such a head start if you make brushing up their EQ as regular as brushing their teeth.